Now you must one of those mellow ones. Love is just like a faucet. It turns off and on. I said love is just like a faucet. It turns off and on. When you think it's on, baby, it's turned off and
Okay, welcome back, everyone. Welcome back from the coffee break. I hope you enjoy it. And I would like to thank you again to our sponsors for supporting the EUROCAE Symposium and also the working coffee break. Continuing with the agenda for today, we have the next flag talk about Paris Olympics 2024, the future of mobility just arrived. As you know, with the new Olympics staged in Paris 2024, there was an initiative of showcasing one of the first examples of future aerial mobility to the world. What can the world expect? What do you do? What do you expect from it? And what are the biggest challenges for this significant achievement? In order to address this topic today, I would like to introduce Oliver Reinhardt from Volocopter. Oliver Reinhardt combines aviation with automotive background to manage all certification, safety, and compliance management aspects at Volocopter. In addition, he is coordinating the development of the Volocopter air operations ecosystems, together with maintenance organizations, crew training, and airspace integration. During his career, Oliver has played an instrumental role in more than 9 aircraft certification projects through the past 28 years. He has been member of the European Commission's Drone Leadership Group, drafting the Drone Strategy 2.0, as well of the various FAA and EASA rulemaking groups dealing with the CS23, Part 21, and operation of UAS for UEM. Oliver co-chairs the EUROCAE Working Group 112 on VTOL aircraft, co-chairs also the Gamma Electric Propulsion and Innovation Committee, and is active in multiple industry standard committees of EUROCAE and ASTM. Unfortunately, Oliver is not able to make it today because of last-minute change on the business trip, and we finally get a video recording of the flash talk. I hope you enjoy it.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear fellow EUROCAE members, my name is Oliver Reinhardt and I'm the Chief Risk and Certification Officer of Volocopter. Some unforeseen business needs unfortunately required me to cancel my trip to Lucerne on a very short notice, which I really feel sorry about. However, I did not want to let EUROCAE down. Therefore, thank you very much for this opportunity to provide my flash talk to you, at least in a recorded way. Here at Volocopter, my role is to care for aircraft certification, to secure the setup of the later airline operations, and to coordinate all the rulemaking activities with all authorities, be it in Europe or in all other countries that we are working together with. And in addition, I have the true honor to serve as a co-chair of EUROCAE Working Group 112, actually right from the start of this working group. And I'm also the co-chair of the Gamma EPIC committee. With all of this, I'm part of the epicenter to secure the appearance of innovative air mobility this summer in Paris. Title of this flash talk is Paris Olympics, the Future of Mobility. So let's stop a moment here. What does this really mean? So what we will see in reality, it's an operational validation, which is a sneak preview that allows us to understand how it really will look like this new thing of innovative air mobility. So it's not just a demo flight like we did during the Paris Air Show. It's much more than this. However, it's not yet a full-blown network operations across all of the city. It shall be a meaningful appearance to, first of all, then allow the people to experience it in real life. And here we're looking at something different than Paris Air Show, what I mentioned before. Paris Air Show, the enthusiasts came to watch it, to see it, to be able to experience it before it is there in reality. Also, they were curious and wanted to see, how does it really feel? And to us, they were positively surprised that it's silent, you don't hear it. In front of the clouds of the typical summer city, it just vanishes. So it's not really something to be in fear of. But now it gets different. Now we have the real people living in the cities that get the experience, that get to see it in real life. That will give us a different feedback. It will allow us as an operator, together with our partners, to get a representative operational experience from a more scheduled use case. We want to fly multiple times on a day, on a regular basis, and that's something different, and we will be learning from this. It allows us to reconfirm the assumptions taken by authorities, OEMs, operators, and it's here plainly to learn for all of us. So, remember for a moment how unique this is, what we are talking about here, what we plan to do. It's the first time an operational validation within a megacity. We fly a brand new type of aircraft, a type of aircraft that has never been certified before, that has never been operated before on a regular scheduled basis. That includes a lot of things, just to name two of them. A new concept of energy logistics. We are not refueling the aircraft, we are charging it. We are swapping batteries. We handle high amounts of electrical energy. And we have a complete new type of pilot rating behind this. It's different requirements that we have to the people operating and handling these aircrafts. And for this new type of aircraft, we do not have real-life data. And just to remember what aviation is about, or what aviation makes most use of, it's data, it's experience. We don't have that. Now, where do we do this? Very simple. We do it in the biggest metropolitan area in Europe. Even more, even worse, in the most densely populated area within Europe. An area that is known for significant traffic challenges. That's where our value proposition comes from. And it's in an environment where we know we have critical citizens with strong opinions. I really would have loved to be with you in Lucerne right now and be able to listen to the panel that must have happened just before my recording gets presented on public acceptance of innovative aerial service. This is truly one of the crucial elements we have to work on and have to properly manage and overcome. Well, we were at the point of where we do it, not to forget, we do it at the very same time when one of the biggest sports events in the world is about to take place. In order to make that challenge happen, what do we work towards? First of all, we have to manage a first-time approval of EASA, the French DGAC, of course also our German LBA, which is the authority responsible for us as a German manufacturer, to conduct such an iconic appearance. And we have to get these first-time approvals not just for a single event, but for the beginning of a continuous operation. So what do we hope to achieve out of this? We want to demonstrate for the first time that this new mode of transportation, it's here today. We want to demonstrate that it is safe, sustainable, and reliable. And it's not just fancy ideas, it actually works. And again, that's where reality kicks in. We are demonstrating what is feasible today. Technology of today, batteries of today, the way how we handle it. And it might not serve the full picture as everybody is hoping for. True, admit it. But what we will see from that demonstration is that it's already a meaningful addition and value proposition that we all can build upon. Then what we hope to achieve, continuing on that point, as mentioned before, we want to gain expert experience. We want to develop this public acceptance. And we want to use this as a stepping stone, not just for us, for the whole industry, to come to next levels of products, to gain a next level of acceptance and understanding that we are not just following dreams. We are doing something that is meaningful, and you can trust in the industry that the industry will deliver. So what are the challenges behind this? First of all, it only gets real when it gets real. That's one thing we are learning day by day the hard way right now. The real challenges only show up now, and they need fast answers. I vividly do remember in the beginning when we started all these discussions, having no regulations in place, and yeah, if I just remember back, I mean, it's 7 years ago when I came first time to Volocopter, when we first showed up in Cologne at EASA and said, hey, look at this, that's what we plan to do. How can we make this happen? We were rapidly coming together, sitting with the experts on the tables, discussing about what it means. How can such a service look like? How do all the elements come together? And we had a nice picture in our mind. But now, when we want to get the real approvals for a service, for a route, for a concept of operation, that is not just happening once, but is intended to happen repeatedly, the true questions show up now, and we are answering them one by one. We do not just bring a new aircraft, we have to develop an ecosystem, which means we have to work with strong partners. We cannot do it all on our own. This just cannot happen alone. So everybody involved in this, however, is doing it for the first time again. The authorities already spoke about this. New regulations needed, new understanding needed. Us as the OEM, it's the first time we're building such an aircraft. We have no legacy we can build upon, experience we can draw from. We have to do it the first time and have to do it right. Operator. Of course, we know how to operate a fixed-wing aircraft from a regular airfield. We know how to operate a helicopter from a heliport. Yes, but these vehicles that we are doing now, they have different ways of operation, different performance classes and categories, and we need to adapt to this first time. Airport operator, same thing. Of course, we can operate these vehicles from a regular airport or from a regular heliport, but the true benefit comes out of that system when we use the possibilities, the technical and performance possibilities, and dedicate also the landing site operations to getting the best out of it. It's the first time. Regional authorities, same thing. Security, police, fire brigades. We are not handling with fuel, with avgas, with kerosene or whatever you have in there. We're dealing with high energy batteries on airfield landing sites. New challenges, challenges we are developing standards for within EUROCAE as we are speaking. Aviation typically builds upon data. So normally when I come with a new idea to EASA in Cologne and tell them, hey, I want to certify this, the standard response I get is, can you show me data? How does it work? How does it operate? What's the experience level alongside with it? And I have to say, sorry, Don't have it. There are no examples yet. So where shall we start from? First of all, it's about safety. So how do we secure safety for something that new? And how do we overcome the fears? That was one of the big challenges to really work into, and we are still in this. Our first appearance will help us to close some further questions, but the challenge remains. And then there is a vast dynamic around the globe. We have different systems that have started to develop in the different markets, which even builds up a kind of a competition with parallel work streams. And somehow we have to get these together again, as we need to concentrate and find a proper solution that can work around the globe. Who are we? We at Volocopter, and that's true, the same for most of the other OEMs that are in this market. We are a late-stage deep tech startup. In our case, we are non-public with a broad investor portfolio, which has a very specific interest in getting this product rapidly to the market and starting to earn some money into it. We do not have products on the market that secure our living. Clearly, our focus is get that thing out and safely into the market. So for us, that always means then, where do we put the priorities? And that's unfortunately one of the reasons why I'm not here with you today in Lucerne, but had to decide to stay here in Bruchsal at our main headquarters to take care for some urgent business needs. And that happens in multiple cases. Our capacity is limited, pre-revenue dictates clear priorities, and us as market participants, we need to decide where to put this effort. So the whole setup that we have is unique in aviation. We're doing something completely new, and we implement a complete ecosystem at once, and all of this before even being at the market in the first time. Paris 2024, the future of mobility. So what it delivers us is an entry into sustainable electric aviation, a basis for later automated operations. These vehicles are just predefined to support this type of operations in the future. It's a demonstration that with new technologies, we cannot just improve what we know already, but we can allow for complete new solutions overall. It will reconfirm that all the hard work that the industry and the authorities and the ASDOs like EUROCAE have put into this was worth it. It's for all of us a brand new learning of how we can deal with highly unprecedented challenges within a system that classically builds upon years of stepwise learning process. That's a mind shift, a paradigm shift of what we have been doing all together here. And it shows us what we all can achieve when we work closely together with all the stakeholders in an open and, most important, in a solution-oriented way. So I'm looking really forward to see all of you join us and experience this future of mobility during this big summer in Paris or at any one of the subsequent occasions. I'm really looking forward to what we will be speaking about a year from now when all of this has happened.
Well, thank you, Oliver, for the presentation, and let's continue with the following session before the lunch break. I would like to introduce the next panel on the topic of vertiports, drones, integrations, and counter-UAS strategies in airport environments. Within EUROCAE, several working groups as Working Group 105, Working Group 115 in UAS and counter-UAS technologies, and others like Working Group 112, already named, are addressing innovative ground infrastructure as Vertiports are doing a great job to establish a baseline for the integration of all of these new topics within the current aviation ecosystem. Today, we are lucky to have this panel with the main objective to show what is going on and how the industry referents and the regulators are working to follow the pace of innovation. I would like to introduce the moderator of this interesting panel, Mr. Bosko Rafalovic. Bosko Rafalovic is the responsible for the regulatory policies and standards in Skyguide's U-Space UTM program. This role includes the close cooperation with FOCA on the tasks related to U.S. aerospace designation, as well the definition of the CIS UASP's performance requirements. Thank you, Bosko. Thank you for the speakers. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Javier, very much. Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, thank you very much for coming. We have an interesting setup for this discussion today. As we heard from Oliver, the disruption is already there, and yet we would be having 4 panelists who, without exception, devoted their entire professional career to aviation, right? So some cynic might say that's why they will be talking about the Counter-UAS measures. But then they wouldn't be talking only about that. They will be talking actually a lot broader than that about integrating the disruptive technology, the disruptive aviation stream into an existing framework of infrastructure, services, and operations, and Counter-UAS measures as one of the integration challenges, among others. I have honor to present today's panelists from the left, Mr. Jean-Marc Flon from Aéroports de Paris Group. Jean-Marc Flon is currently Director of Operations, Safety and Development in Air Operations at Aéroports of Paris Group. Started off his career as a tower approach controller at various locations in France, and then moved on to management role in DSNA, and then over into policy and strategy definition, supporting DG Move, Single European Sky Group, also EU and ECAC voice in the ICAO high-level conference organization, and then also supporting CESAR joint undertaking. Thank you very much. Then we also have Maria, Maria Algar-Ruiz with us, coming from EASA. Maria started also in aviation industry as an aerospace engineer, expert in jet propulsion, starting with Airbus. Then short excursion outside of aviation into CERN, but good, it's an alpine region, so it's convenient, it's consistent with our today's location. And then moving over into the regulatory and policy rulemaking and policy domain, first with the Central Joint Aviation Authorities, and then over to EASA. Maria is longer in EASA than what EASA has the competencies in ATMANS domain, and I overheard you the other day saying that it's actually you who drove very much or helped EASA extend its competencies to ATMANS. So certainly quite a caliber to discuss from the perspective of EASA challenges of integration, in particular, since Maria moved then, as of 2019, if I'm not wrong, over to innovation cell of EASA to support the UAS operations, and currently playing the role of the drone program manager at EASA. Very good. Then with us, we have another long-time aviation devotee, Kim Cylinder, who started also in an ANSP, but then moved on to start his own business, Kookiejar, very promising name. We do all believe that operating at Vertiports would be a treat, at least at the start and the end point of it, because we understand that Kookiejar is a company trying to look into the start and end point of the urban air mobility or innovative air mobility movements, and then with another company also managing the volumes of airspace in between, so quite a holistic view. And then very specifically, Contributing to our today's discussion will be Kim's perspective from the leader of the EUROCAE working group on the Vertiport collaborative decision making. And last but not least, Sergiu, who took in a way an opposite direction, starting from the regulatory and policy, rulemaking and policy perspective in the Moldovan CAA, moving over to Chisinau Airport, to then through EASA, through EUROCAE standardization working groups, move over to like hard industry, Boeing, and that's where Sergiu now occupies the position of the autonomous aviation global regulatory expert. These job titles today are just very difficult to remember, and they are also very unique, but very telling as well. In it, autonomous indeed, and global very much so. We tend to have focus on Europe. I work for Skyguide, which is European ANSP, and of course many other European players. But then we actually see industry such as yours, but that also Oliver has mentioned, and the challenges are indeed global. So thank you very much indeed. Let's see how they cope. I would invite you to start, Jean-Marc, with the presentation of the challenges that lay in front of the Airport of Paris group, with focus not only on Counter-UAS measures, but also specifically on the integration of advanced air mobility into, say, classic aerodrome environment. Please, Jean-Marc.
So good morning, everyone. Really happy, and thank you for EUROCAE for having this opportunity to present the position of Group Aéroports de Paris in advanced air mobility. First of all, I would like to say it's a global strategy. ADP is investing actually in promoting advanced air mobility. It is not just for the Olympic Games. We began in 2020 with a sandbox in Pontoise, where we experienced with a partner, Volocopter, the pioneering of advanced air mobility and the integration of it. Of course, as Olivier Renard presented, we have the Olympic Games where we will showcase, but we are also having a scaled approach to promote and thrive advanced air mobility, to see what are the business cases and the possibility for these and the opportunity for them to thrive. I think also in terms of drones, what is important is also that we look at with the 360-degree approach. We have more and more aerial works which are done near the airport, which is done with drones. So we should have to look at it in terms of safety, in terms of security. And of course, we have the non-collaborative drones, sometimes intentional, so of the times, most of the time non-intentional, how we tackle these issues. So as I said, the Vertiport integration, we had the sandbox in Pontoise where we experienced the vehicle. We tested the Volocopter, Volocity aircraft to see in terms of noise, in terms of safety, in terms of also the possibility to accommodate such an aircraft, the electric aspect, the batteries. We looked also at what does it mean to implement a Vertiport, what is needed, which was mentioned, rescue and firefighting services. What does that mean? How we tackle these aspects? These are new types. We should look into these questions. And finally, also, we look at the integration of the Vertiports in a dense area and in airspace and in air traffic management. As I said, it's during the Olympic Games. Actually, we'll have 4 experimental routes between the Charles de Gaulle Airport and Le Bourget, between the heliport of Issy-les-Moulineaux and the small aerodrome of Saint-Cyr. And also it was mentioned at the heart of the city, we hope to have the experimentation of flying over Paris and landing on a barge, on a floating barge near the Austerlitz train station, which is also near a hospital. So we'll hope that there's the question of acceptance is the main issue. We'll come to that back later on, and already it was outlined in the previous panel. Now, if we look at the Counter-UAS and the requirements for an airport operator, I think there's a regulatory context which we should understand. First of all, we have the basic regulation and the aerodrome regulation, Regulation 139/2014, which clearly states that threats from human activity has to be identified, monitored, and mitigated. So this is a requirement for us as airport operator to mitigate all activities. And of course, drone activities are human activities near an airport, and we have to take that into account. In terms of security also, the airports most of the time, and in France at least, have been identified as an entity of a vital importance, and security aspects have to be mitigated, have to be identified and to be mitigated. Of course, it's the perimeter fence, but also the airspace is another part. To be mentioned that airspace management in France, and I think in most of the countries, airspace management is the responsibility in terms of security, is the responsibility of the air defense. So this is not a responsibility of the airport operator. And finally, there's also the resilience issue. Resilience is an important part. We've seen with Gatwick the event in 2018, and which led to the guidance material set out by EASA on resilience and how to mitigate non-collaborative drones. This is also an aspect that we have to take into account. Now, what is the CONOPS? And following actually these various requirements, Groupe Aéroport de Paris has decided first to went into a concept of operations to see how we tackle non-collaborative drone, and in terms of information management and alert system. We developed these CONOPS, but at the same time we needed some tools for detection. So this is a two-side approach, developing a CONOPS with an alert procedure and also having the means to detect the various threats. So we see here the CONOPS that has been developed, taking into account it's a collaborative decision-making, and Kim Silander will be happy about that. It's a collaborative decision-making process which involves, of course, the NSP, the airport operator, and also the competent authority, the gendarmerie, the police, and the air defense. And we see there, I will not go into the details, the various steps, and how these threats has to be identified, whether it's a threat or not, because most of the time it is already a drone that has been allowed to operate, so we should be able to identify that and to mitigate when it's non-collaborative. What does that mean? Is it intentional, non-intentional? These are aspects that need to be tackled. So in terms of detection, as I said, detection is important. I think we have invested in various tools. First of all, we have tools that identify the drones that have a remote ID. So we identify 3 levels. The first level, as I said, the drones that have a remote ID. The second level is identifying the drones which do not have a remote ID but which are in contact with the pilot. And finally, the drones which are neither of the 2 categories. And for that, we have various tools. Not to be overlooked, we need a camera. We have an optronic camera which can detect also in low visibility, and to mitigate the threat, to identify whether it's a drone or not a drone. This is an important aspect. So we have the various tools, we have radar, and the most important part, we have a control and command system, a C2 system, which is manned, which is situated at the airport, which gather all the data from the various sensors and tries to identify whether it's a known drone or a non-collaborative drone, and then reports its data sharing to the relevant competent authority to identify the threat and ensure the mitigation of the threat. In terms of detection, actually this means we have 57 sensors we are installing in 37 places. I will not go into the detail because this is sensitive data, of course. So 57 sensors, 37 places, covering 14 airports. It's an area where 90 kilometers per 75 kilometers, which we cover, with various level of identification according to the sensitivity of the place. So as a conclusion, actually, which would be food for thought for the panel discussions, first of all, we see an ADP a strategy to promote and enable innovation and the advanced air mobility. We have a strategy that has been defined many years ago, which is called Pioneers 2025. The term Pioneers says it all. We are promoting innovation. What is needed is also a 360 approach, intertwining with vertiports integration, drones handling, US space service provision, and also Counter-UAS. The problem now, we are working in silos, looking at drones management in the US space, looking at Counter-UAS. We need a holistic approach and a 360-degree approach on the matter. What is important also is the detection capability. We cannot rely only to air reps or the detection by the view by the people who do the runway inspections. We need some detection tool to ensure that we are in a anticipating mode, in a proactive manner, rather than being a reactive mode. However, there's a question. So the question, the efficacy is limited if the following capacities are not ensured. Detection is good, but we have to ensure first the identification. Is it a known drone, a collaborative drone, or not a collaborative drone? If it's a not collaborative drone, is it a threat, or is it just a non-voluntary penetration of the airspace? These aspects need to be managed, which means that for the threat assessment, we need the competent authority, because it is the role of the competent authority. So we have the competent authority to be involved. And finally, also to manage the threat is to eradicate the threat. And this is also the responsibility of the competent authority. So as I said, we are still on advanced air mobility. We are still pioneering. And for the future, our view is to in order to allow and thrive the advanced air mobility and ensure the integration of vertiports, we need various aspects. This would be the discussion of the panel. First of all, we should go unmanned, because for the time being, what we will do for Paris 24 is a manned operation. In the end, we should go automated and unmanned. We should ensure the setup of relevant USSPs, because they will be the ones being able to identify the various types of operations and ensuring that all the operations that are allowed are identified in a prior mode. And we should also revise separation standards. For me, this aspect is paramount. We should ensure, if we want to integrate in a dense area, we should have some strategic confliction with the manned traffic that is managed by ATC, to have side by side the USSP and the air traffic control working hand in hand to ensure operations and integration of unmanned traffic in an airport. And finally, the last point, which was already said beforehand, the acceptance by the public, by society in general, but also by the military. The lower airspace is mainly the area of low operations for the air defense. We should ensure that there's acceptability for that. Thank you, and I give the floor back to the moderator.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Jean-Marc, for giving us the perspective of Paris airports, but also for setting the scene with the broad range of questions. Certainly the Counter-UAS as a challenge stands out besides the traffic management integration challenges and ground facilities integration challenges. That's the point that is often seen exclusively in the security domain, but it's also, as you told us, part of the aviation domain. So not only national defense, but also the aviation domain. And I therefore invite Maria to give us the regulatory perspective of EASA, specifically on the Counter-UAS, or in principle on Counter-UAS challenges that exist with or without other challenges of integration in the aerodrome environment, and then specifically when it comes to integrating it, the drones in the aerodrome environment in the context of Vertiport, because as we learned, EASA did recently the air risk assessment for Vertiports, and that's where it put out. So Maria, please.
Thank you very much, Bosco, and also thank you very much, Anna and her team, for having organized a very interesting symposium for the gala dinner. And so I really enjoy. It's great, and the Lucerne city is perfect for this symposium this year. So I will follow up in my presentation. So this panel addresses many topics, but I will start from what Jean-Marc has led, so the Counter-UAS, and but it's a bit difficult for me to see from there, but well, okay, let's see. So Counter-UAS and what we have done in EASA and what is at the moment from what we have done and the links for what Jean-Marc has said as well. So when we have these incidents in Gatwick, so we all started analyzing, and in particular in EASA, because we were in the process of adoption of the drones regulation. So obviously, the first thing is let's analyze the regulation and let's see, do we have all the mitigation means in place, at least to address, I refer to these 3C users. Of course, I'm not talking here about commercial UAS operators who know what they are doing, but more the clueless or the careless. So the criminal is a different thing, but I will say a part of these users, so what have we in the regulation? So we realize that we have a lot of things in the regulatory framework, but because the regulations were just adopted and still we have the national system, so there was a need to start a huge campaign for educating those users in the open category in particular, because as I said here, we are not talking about the commercial operators, or the Amazon, the Wind, the colleagues that were before on the societal acceptance. Actually, they need to lead with an impact on societal acceptance, which is led by probably misuse of drones in the open category. And this is what we assess. So what do we have? We have a regulation, but probably at this point in time, yes, but when these incidents occur in 2019, we realized that probably the drones operators in the open category who could buy a drone in MediaMarkt or even deliver with the Amazon, so they didn't know they need to register. So what Larissa was talking about, now we have more and more drones operators being registered. They didn't know that they need to have to pass a certificate depending on the category of drones. They didn't know that they need to look into the system of geozones. Can they fly? Can they not fly in an airport environment? Of course, they cannot unless they are authorized. So, but these things, we realized that there was a need, together with the member states, and we start big campaigns on educating the public on the general use of drones, to be responsible, to enjoy the use of drones, but to be responsible. So this was the first objective. And I will say is complete in the sense that we have created a campaign, but I will say one can never complete that. This could be ongoing for almost ever. You still need to promote the good use of drones. We did what Jean-Marc has used to do the risk assessment for how to mitigate this new hazard in an airport environment. So we work there with all the stakeholders, and we produce 2 volumes, one generic that was publicly available, and the second one upon demand that EASA was made available in particular to the aerodrome operators. And basically is what the colleagues are using or are recommended to be used to assess this hazard. We have just conducted and finalized the study on the vulnerability of manned traffic today. So the old aircraft types from fixed wing to rotorcraft, and the different type of rotorcraft, and also gliders and no balloons. It was not in the scope, but the majority of the aircraft that they are at the moment flying in and out on an airport environment. So we did the study on the vulnerability of this aircraft to a drone collision, and we studied different drone collision. I invite you to see the results. They are available in the website. There are several recommendations addressed. Of course, we could make more robust the design of existing aircraft, but we're not going to change the existing fleet. This will be disproportionate. So most of the recommendations is on the design of the drones, and this is what we need to see how we incorporate this on the CE marking. We are encouraging a lot in the industry to participate, and we are participating. We are active participants of the EUROCAE Working Group 115. Still, the industry participation there is, I would say, I take this opportunity, and this I put my council member, please, industry, support the developments, because my colleague says always that it's difficult to get the industry to support this development. Of course, we need the standards at least for the detection part of this technology, and I think the colleagues of Eurocontrol are doing also an excellent work supporting this working group, and we hope that we will get the standards that we need very soon. And the last but not the least, and this is still ongoing, we are working on harmonizing the occurrence reporting and how to, if we start making impact assessments on those incursions, and to assess, of course, efficiencies on Counter-UAS, at least for the detection side, because EASA is not responsible for the annulation act part of it. But Jean-Marc, we need to deal with two things, of course. But in order to make a good assessment, we need to have a good reporting system. And what we realize is that we're not getting a coherent data in the databases on drone incursions, and even I would say when pilots is a drone. So what is exactly the risk, or have they see a drone? So we realize that this data that we have is doesn't allow us to do a proper risk assessments, and we are working basically on the occurrence reporting regulation to harmonize the occurrence reportings related to UAS. This is for Counter-UAS, and now I will go for the first part that Jean-Marc was addressing, so the integration of these of UASs, man-beatles, and how we in EASA were working since almost the very beginning, since Oliver and others came to EASA and say, we want to certify this, we want to do these operations. So we immediately needed to think how we are going to integrate them in the aerospace, but also together with the system infrastructure. How we did the job in EASA together with all of you, you know it pretty well by now. I think this picture is in all presentations from us. So we have started, obviously, with the readiness of the industry from the open specific category, which regulations came and they were published, and they start to almost all the aspects of the regulations are by now enforced. We did the US space as the first regulation on US space. It will not be the last, so we still need to go on implementation of US space. And we have, as you have heard this morning from Christine Berg from the Commission, we have now a very fresh regulation enabling innovative air mobility operations. So what Olivier aims to do is the operational demonstration, but basically this regulation enables the first regular operations in BFR day only at the beginning. What we aim is, of course, and this is what Jean-Marc says, so the industry, and I guess Sergio will say, yeah, but this is not the end stage. Still, there are other stages to come. Then the dates may vary depending on how industry readiness will be. But this traffic would like to go remotely pilot and with high level of automation unmanned. And then we have something that probably is farther away, but maybe depending, some of the operations in the specific category for high risk may go into the IFR traffic, remotely pilot aircraft, for which we have a panel in ICAO, and they are working on SARPs, and as I talking, I already have a stay letter amending Annex 6 on introducing the AOC for RPAS operators, and we will need to start implementing that in the European framework. So on the aerospace integration approach, again, we took the approach for UAS is operation-centric, risk-based. Well, the same we are doing for the aerospace integration. So basically, the regulation contains already mitigation means on how to deal with the air risk, if we want to call like that. In this regulation, I mean the air risk, the collision, basically the probability of collision and the consequences associated to it between a UAS and a manned traffic. Of course, in the open category, we need to have very simple regulations because the community that we are dealing with are obviously not expert on standardized European rules of the air. They are not pilots. They have ATPL and they have phraseology and they have a radio license. So we need to have very simple conversion of what it means to them, and majority of the requirements of mitigation means are put on the aircraft itself. For instance, the height limit of 120 meters is in the C marking and needs to be there. The remote pilot is very clearly responsible to see the aircraft, so it needs to have the aircraft on visual line of sight and avoid the collision. And we have a very nice video made even for kids from 12 years old. They could, I guess, understand what that means. And the last but not the least, they need to, a part of register, and the drone will have a network identification device, even if they don't now, but in the CE marking it needs to have a network identification device. But in addition, the UAS operator we need to see the existence of geozones that the regulation required all member states to have put in place. So a system of geozones are made available in the geo-awareness device of the drone that they need to have access. So we are working with the manufacturers such as the famous one, DJI, but others, to make this geozone data using the EUROCAE document 318, which has been updated, and using the data model that it can be interoperable all across Europe. And the publication of the member states shall follow also this format, as Larissa, no, it was not you who said, it was Francine. Yeah, so it's a very good document, the EUROCAE document, because enable any UAS pilot to go with this drone, to use the same drone all across Europe, and it will have the same system of geozones. Of course, we are in implementation. I'm not saying it's already finished down, it's already there. We are still working on that. For the specific category, we have I'm not going into the details, but there is a specific operational risk assessment, and one of the aspects is the air risk. And there is a full methodology out there that needs to be followed to get your authorization. So there is the risk mitigation part of it. On the certified category is where we expect, as the risk is high, that the risk mitigation requirements are equivalent to manned traffic, to ATM, and this is still what we are working on. And the next slide will say. Another aerospace integration is the U.S.-based concept. We started working with CESAR in the blueprint in the end of 2016, actually. And we came as a regulatory requirements and as a regulation, we came with a first concept of U.S. space, which is to enable BVLOS operations but it still is not the end stage of U-Space. With the CESAR projects and now working on the ATM master plan amendments, so we expect to have more mature services and concepts that enable us to amend this first U-Space implementation. So it's an aerospace where digital services are provided to the UAS operators. The flight is managed, I would say, at the beginning is managed more on a volume base, but the end will be to manage a 4D trajectory, so we are already started. There is no an air traffic controller who will give acceptance or rejects of the flight authorization. It's a system that is interacting with other systems. And the traffic controller may interact the system only in very rare cases, the concept of dynamic aerospace reconfiguration. And you know all the mandatory services and optional services, and the colleagues like Larissa are very busy working on the implementation of the first U-Space, which enable us to move forward on the U-Space for UIS integrations and least in the area of the open and specific category. So the aerospace risk assessments will give us a lot of data to improve this. Now we go for this aerospace integration of MAN-BTOS. When we developed the notice of proposed amendments for the regulation that has been adopted, obviously we need to see how we integrate this new traffic, which look like helicopters, but they are not helicopters, and they are very novel in the way they operate with the electric propulsion, and also the performance, Olivier has said, are different. The business cases they use are also different, so we needed to assess. And we have a detailed safety risk assessment, which the colleagues of Eurocontrol supported us to develop. And is in the MPA. Here I only going to summarize a bit what was the assumptions. Of course, is certified. We have pilots who are competency. Here is not the pilots of the small UIS in the open category, so they need to have a CPL and type rated on the aircraft. The operations are in BFR day only, of course, and they need to take off and land in a vertiport unless there is an emergency issue, and they will need to have a system or a network of alternative landing sites. And the vertiports maybe not integrated in another airport environment. At the moment, and this is where I look into King, what he's gonna say next, we don't have any concept of traffic management for the first operations in a vertiport. So mean is a BFR traffic, but there is no a concept of traffic management. Of course, this will be a bottleneck if Olivier wants to increase capacity, because at the moment you will have one operator per vertiport. If you want to have more, you need to have a traffic management or a very digital system of collaborative decision-making, because as we were just discussing, we cannot put the VTOL on hold for 20 minutes waiting to land in the vertiport. Is definitively a no-go. So cruise levels will be, of course, lower. Again, endurance performance is an issue. We are in most of the use cases aim to the enhanced category, as we call it, so the most risky environment, and therefore it will be the most constraining environment in terms of requirements. So what the colleagues of Volocopter we need to demonstrate in terms of safe landing capabilities, and is very demanding. And this is something, as he said, we have not done, we are learning, but we are demanding high levels of liability because we are going to a city in a very dense environment. We are not going with our helicopter to fly between air clubs and no one, so that's the reason. There is no impact, and I want to say that this is something the colleagues of ACI and Ansgar is here, Ansgar is here, so on wake turbulence and, for instance, parallel runway operations as well is an issue that we need to assess, but again, we need to have more data on this. And the challenge is, as I said, urban operations, we are very low. And the traffic density, maybe as you want to increase, and again, scale, it became a bottleneck that we need to resolve with technology. Traffic mix, as you will see, and the limits of what can be done with C and avoid depending on the traffic mix that you have. I don't go into the details of all the use cases that we have done. It's a traditional risk assessment methodology, probability of a mid-air collision and the severity, and we use a traditional barrier of air risk model, so the efficiencies of the strategy barrier, tactical barrier, collision avoidance barriers, and providence. So it's a very traditional approach that we use. One thing to clarify, because of course, as Olivier said, we don't have data. So where do we get to what we compare? So basically, what we did were safety criteria, and we discussed this with the colleagues of Eurocontrol, who ran then all the use cases, because we discussed all the assumptions, all use cases, and then they ran the safety assessment, and they came with all these recommendations. Is that the probability of an in-flight collision or near collision between a BFR man-VTOL capable aircraft, so VTOL capable aircraft, as we call it in the regulation, with another aerospace uses in the use case that we are analyzing, so in this case, uncontrolled aerospace without use space, shall not be greater than the probability of the same event with a BFR helicopter in the same situation. Easy to say, a little bit more difficult, because of course we compare for existing BFR helicopter operations that they are happening, for instance, in Paris, in Nice, but of course these are not full-scale up operations, meaning the safety assessment will need to be reevaluated when we start scaling our operations. And here you see all the use cases, the risk assessment for uncontrolled aerospace without use space, in uncontrolled aerospace with use space, and then controlled aerospace without use space, without use space aerospace, and controlled aerospace with use space aerospace. And please, I'm not going to go into all this, but we needed to do this before we have put in place a regulation. So put in place a regulation is a long process. And the last but not the least, integration of ARPA's IFR, for which ICAO has a panel. And we are also working, and here we take a little bit advantage of our dear military, who are already operating males in the aerospace, in non-segregated, even if you say non-segregated aerospace, the Global Hook is being operated, and others in France. And of course, not in big amount of traffic again, but there are some things, and we have developed a concept also with EDA on how to accommodate the early operations. CESA has some solutions which actually are leading to same conclusions. And here, of course, IFR cargo, they will be sharing aerospace with other aerospace users. Ultimately, they may be even transporting passengers. I perhaps not seen that in my life, but maybe yes. And in that case, they will need to comply with the same requirements that today man traffic, or we will need to have the equivalent level of safety. And I finish here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Maria, for this very elaborate picture of EASA's view. We see EASA's focus on risk-based and proportionate regulation, and already certain regulatory instruments for integration have been put forward. Before answering further about the integration, and specifically Kim has been pointed at several by both Jean-Marc and Maria through collaborative decision making, I would actually like to step back and hear from Sergio the perspective of the aircraft manufacturer. One point resonates for me. Jean-Marc said, from the perspective of the airport operator, Jean-Marc calls for the strategic deconfliction, or actually revisiting the separation standards in order to enable strategic deconfliction. Obviously, the back thought there is probably reducing the need for the tactical service provision in order to achieve that. Boeing's concept of operation for the advanced or innovative air mobility, how it's called, mentions something very similar. It uses the term non-interfering operations, right? And then I would like to ask you, Sergio, is then integration an obsolete question, right? If we are able to achieve non-interfering operation and conflicts actually be strategically resolved, is then integration a mute question, or it's actually not that simple? What's your perspective on it?
Well, thank you very much for the question and very insightful presentations from my colleagues. Indeed, I mean, just to give a little bit of background, what Boeing has to do with Vertiports, with integration and so on. So Boeing obviously invests in future technologies. And since a year now, Boeing is a 100% owner of Wisk Aero, which is a VTOL manufacturer based in US, but also having sites in Australia, New Zealand, Canada, not yet in Europe. The specific of this product of Wisk is that we are aiming at IFR flights, so no VFR, with passenger carrying VTOL, but with no pilot on board. So for us, basically, as we've seen from Maria's slide, the regulatory framework is expected to be approved or enforced somewhere at the end of the decade in 2030 or maybe beyond. For us, at least the entry into service, which was announced, is also by the end of this decade, focusing mainly on US. But also considering other regions as well, and I will briefly mention our experience with EASA in this regard after answering your question. Another company Boeing is supported in a joint venture is Skyguide, which is basically positioned as a U-Space service provider, but going beyond, not being like a classical U-Space service provider, but combining something from the ATC, from the U-Space service provider, and focusing specifically on this segment, air taxi operations.
Understood.
So this is basically what Boeing has to do with this ecosystem. And as you mentioned, we have already published, I think, the second iteration. And I said it's like Wisk. We're working very, very closely. We have Boeing experts supporting Wisk very, very much. And sometimes they're not very happy because Boeing is slowing a little bit down the processes and the mindset of a startup. But as we mentioned, at different...
For better or worse?
Yeah.
For better or worse, indeed.
Yeah, and I mean, but still, that's why sometimes there are frictions, because Boeing announced at different fora that we are aiming for the safety levels similar to commercial aviation, 10 to minus 9, and obviously we're not going to compromise on this. That's why the integration part takes the biggest part of the efforts, and this is amplified also by the fact that Wisk intends to be the manufacturer of the VTOL, but also the operator. So we don't want to put on so we want to address this both roles. Don't want to put the burden of the operations to another entity and so on. So we would like to address this because Wisk knows better its product, working very much with Skyguide they're partnered with, and also with the regulators around the globe to support the concept of operation. And the integration is indeed the biggest part, the airspace integration. This takes the biggest amount of the efforts currently, also in addition to the aircraft certification, especially with no pilot on board. There are totally different complexities brought by this concept. I would like here to mention, because our ConOps was focused on US. Obviously, we took into consideration the airspace specifics in US, some stakeholder spectrum, and so on. And EASA has in place, not many regulators do, but EASA has in place a few mechanisms of early engagement with the industry, like the pre-application contract, technical advice contract, and innovation partnership contract. So we have engaged with EASA already on a phase 1 of innovation partnership contract, where we took our concept of operation from US without changing it. We brought to EASA. They looked at it and said, well, these are the areas you need to adjust if you want to come to Europe. Now we are in discussions of advancing to a more detailed phase, addressing this part. And actually, the ground infrastructure is also bringing a lot of questions and and challenges. And not only the vertiports which are around airports, but also the vertiports which are in the urban environments. And we have a bit of information on how we address the ground infrastructure in our ConOps. But I want to offer also the opportunities to other people to discuss. And what is also very important is we've realized this about the collaborative decision making and information sharing, which is something which will, let's say, set the foundation for this, because this new type of industry brought, I think, around the table more stakeholders, and not necessarily aviation stakeholders who are familiar with the ecosystem. And there's a need to make sure that everybody who is involved, the Counter-UAS is also a part of this ecosystem. And with getting the air taxi services into the urban environments, the Counter-UAS, they kind of extend the application along the routes, and also on the operating on the infrastructure sites in the cities.
Thank you very much, Sergio. Very interesting indeed. And for me, the key takeaway is that Boeing is indeed then planning on enabling operations through embracing the integration. So the autonomy doesn't mean ignoring everything else, operating in its own bubble forever. And that at least resonates with me as a very sensible strategy that also allows the scalability of operations and applicability in very different environments. However, then it really calls for a number of instruments to be put in place, a number of new instruments or existing instruments revisited, revised in the context of digital aviation. And that's where I would be happy to invite you, Kim, then to tell us and to share with us how a known concept of airport collaborative decision-making is now merging with the digital environment of UAS operations and vertiports. Please.
Kiitos. Terve, mitä kuuluu? Jag heter Kim Selander, jag kommer från Sverige, jag är född i Finland och jag jobbar med Vertiports, jag bygger Vertiports. Och you may wonder why I'm speaking Swedish to you. But one of the foundations of airport CDM and vertiport CDM is that we understand what we're speaking about. And I think there's a few people from Finland and there's some guy having a summer house in Sweden that does understand what I say. But we need all the stakeholders to actually understand what we are talking about. Kookiejar, I'm the founder of Kookiejar. We build vertiports, but one of the things that I've been working on in the past is airport CDM. I helped Singapore Changi Airport to implement it, one of the first outside Europe, according to the Eurocontrol milestone approach. We also worked with Hamad, Abu Dhabi, Gatwick Airport, Lyon, and so on. But one of the big things is not only speaking the same language, it needs to mean the same thing as well. So definitions is extremely important. One of my first presentations, I went to the US talking about our IKEA style of vertiports, building cheap vertiports. In Swedish, cheap means fantastically good. It's the best thing you can have. We are very modest people, so we like cheap things.
But in the US and probably all the rest of the world, cheap means not so good quality. So cost effective is a much better word, right? So that's an example of where you can have misunderstandings. With airport CDM, once upon a time, long time ago, we had a lot of work from Eurocontrol, where the action was really to get the same definition, same meaning. So estimated time of arrival. For air traffic control, it meant touchdown. For airline and passengers, it was on the stand or by the gate, so to say. So they had different meanings. And of course, if you go to Schiphol Airport, for example, that could mean 40-minute difference, actually, an estimated time of arrival. So those are the things that we already done. And that's what Vertiport CDM is about, is actually to apply what's already been done in the airport world into the Vertiport world. So we don't start and create our new definitions in the advanced air mobility market. So that's basically one of the foundations of why we are doing this. Of course, we want to address another need. Why do we have a CDM? Is it because we want to speak the same language, or is it because we want to become more effective? We already talked about the situation of demand and capacity. So if I click here, I think something should happen on the screen. Ah, there's somebody coming. Oh, 3 more or 2 more. That means obviously you will have a hold time if we don't plan for the traffic. And as you know, battery-driven VTOLs are not really made for long holds. That's not good. And if you want to go to the Olympic Games, Sweden is very good in pole vaulting, for example. Everybody would like to see that. I think we will have a high demand for the Swedish Olympic gold that we will get in pole vaulting. But when everybody comes there, obviously you don't want to see it from the air. You want to see it in the stadium, so you want to be able to land. So that is something that we need to address with Vertiport CDM. Vertiport CDM has nuances. You could say with airport CDM, a lot of focus and a lot of effort is on variable taxi times. So anybody worked with the airport CDM had to deal with the variable taxi times, the time it takes to go from a stand to a runway and vice versa. Obviously, we don't have that issue with Vertiports in that sense. It's not a major issue in our sense. But minimum time to turnaround could be something that we want to tweak and work with more. So when we file the flight plan, we take into account that somebody has accessibility problems. So we actually want to have a longer turnaround time for that specific flight. In an airport, it's a standard time that is agreed by the ground handler and the airport and the airline. So I mean, more effort on those things, so there's a little bit of tweaking, and that's what we are going to talk about in the Vertiport CDM world. So what are we doing? Sorry, I forgot to say. Of course, interoperability. Some of the Vertiports will be in an airport environment. And controllers, I don't know, do we have any controllers here? Raise your hand. Oh, okay. Extremely conservative. We only have a few, so I'm safe saying that. I hope you don't kill me. Extremely conservative. So you can't really change a whole controller community that's already adapted to airport CDM procedures. Really helps to work with the existing procedures that you have. Treat it like a helicopter maybe at an airport. But the benefit of using Vertiport CDM, keeping the same definitions, is that the systems are interoperable. And we have procedures that also sort of fit what we want to do. So what are we doing? We are trying to click. So information sharing. Of course, like I said, that's where we are focusing. It's no point starting to look at adverse conditions or special tools that can optimize the operation. We need to start with information sharing. So that's what we're working on in the Vertiport CDM team. Of course, we will try to work our way downward and see if we can create some sort of a Vertiport milestone approach to implement CDM. We have 3 threads. One is the definition team. Last meeting we had a few weeks ago, I thought, frankly, honestly, I thought it was only going to be 3 people coming to that meeting. I think there were around 35 to 40 people attending from all over the world, which is quite interesting because definitions in the CDM world are actually different if you go to North America and Europe. You have surface CDM and airport CDM, and there's nuances there. This is something that we work on. Of course, we work on the milestones, and we try to agree on definitions. I have 2 minutes. Okay, I will speak very slowly because I only have 1 slide left. Okay, I will speak slowly. But anyway, I worked on definitions in Eurocontrol. I was actually in the ASMDCS unit back in 2007 and 8. We worked on the departure manager definition. It was quite an exciting job. Took us, I think, 4 workshops to agree within the community what a D-man is. I met a German guy, and I want to end with this note because definitions is important. Of course, we have D-man, we have A-man, but do you know what B-man is? I think some of you met it yesterday, the bar manager. That is basically also a very important tool, and I think next time we have a CDM workshop, I would like to have it physically because I like to meet people, and then maybe we meet the bar manager. So thank you for that.
Thank you very much, Kim. 1 minute only. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much for this. Then I would like also to. Do we have questions on a slide? And I don't know. I beg your pardon? No question on the slide. No question. Okay. We filled in all the time. We allowed the audience, but indeed, thank you very much for the very informative and intriguing presentations, and also exchange what, if I would allow myself to formulate then the takeaway, when talking or started talking about the drone, especially in writing, right? You often have to define the UAS versus what's on the other side, and then there's the struggle begins. You say manned versus unmanned, and that's not gender sensitive. Then you say crewed versus unscrewed, and that's borderline offensive. And then you say, and then it brings me to the point of, say, innovative versus traditional aviation, and that triggers me very much, right? Because my teenage boys call me boomer, which is probably worse than being called conservative. But then integration as a challenge is to make comfortable also the conservative ones, and not only to make room for the new ones. And I'm fairly encouraged to see that at least this panel of speakers opens the room for this perspective of integration. So it's not an elephant in a china shop, but it's rather a very delicate weaving into an existing aviation tissue with a safety focus, with a focus on the public benefit, and with the focus of goal-orientated, with really enabling what we have been talking about. Thank you very much indeed for your precious contribution, and thank you very much to the audience as well.
Thank you very much for this very good panel. And to everyone, we're going to move on to the lunch, and we will have a little bit less than an hour. Please all be back at 2:10. I'm sorry.